Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us again today. My name is Sonia Siddiqui, and joining me today is John Riviero.
Hey, hi everybody.
And he's the co-founder of Zero to Hired, and we're really looking forward to today's webinar. He's got lots to share with us. He's going to be talking about the 5 habits of successful job seekers and more.
Thank you, Sonia. Thank you for that introduction, and thank you to ACCES Employment for the opportunity to sit with your audience and to go through the presentation with them. So let's go right into the very first one. So today what we're going to cover are the 5 habits of successful job seekers. And before we get into that, I just want to give you a little bit of background about myself and what I do and why I am here today. So a couple of things. How my story started was back in 2009, and I don't know if people remember 2009, economic crisis, organizations were downsizing, right-sizing, whatever the word is you want to use, but they were cutting back and scaling back on their business and their employees. So at the time, I was faced with the challenge. I was walked into a room with a slew of other managers, and we were sat at this big board table, and the director at the time said, unfortunately, guys, our team's been outsourced. And, this was in March, and he said, in September, you're all going to lose your jobs, including your teams. There's no chance for repatriation. There's no chance of moving over to the vendor. You guys are you're gone. So in the months that preceded up to September, we started preparing for being unemployed. And for me, I'd been with the same organization for 10 years. I really didn't know what I was going to do next. And I had some personal stuff that was also happening at the same time that just compounded the problem. And I don't know if you've been to this situation where you've lost your job and those feelings, you get overwhelmed, you're just lost and distracted. What I ended up doing in that case was I just started looking after my team. And what we started doing is preparing these people for interviews. So I had a lot of people on my team. It had been years since they've gone through interviews. It had been years that they sat in front of recruiters and they were just lost. So what we did, we went through a whole program. We worked with our HR recruiting partners, and we just prepared. We ran people through mock interviews. And what would happen is when they went out to interviews, we would get calls from the hiring manager saying, I want to take this person right away. So fast forward to September of 2009, the day that we're supposed to be all let go, all 25 people on my team have jobs. And we were one of the very few departments where everybody had work. So that's not the end of the story, but in that part of it is where we learned the strategies and the tools to really prepare people effectively for interviews. So fast forward to 2015, I now have to put this whole new team together. I got to hire 35 people, and I look at what the best people bring to the table. So I'm very big on hiring high-performing people that can bring things that are innovative, are strategic, and they can deliver the work without having a lot of direction. So, and in that process, I ended up hiring an individual from a brand new country, from Dubai, a new Canadian. His name is Connell. And Connell, his story is really interesting because he was here for only 2 weeks, and within the 2 weeks, he had 3 different job offers. And as a new Canadian, and some of you can probably, relate to this, it can be a struggle to get those job offers, but Connell did it in 2 weeks, 3 job offers, and luckily I was the person that hired him. So what ended up happening, Connell and I started talking. I talked about my 2009 experience. He talked about his experience moving to Canada. And we put our 2 stories together, and we wrote the book, Zero to Hire. And what we've been doing since 2016 is working on the book. We published it, but we've also kept seeking more updated information. So one of the things that I do today is I actually run a podcast where I interview Canadian experts in the career field. So people who give advice on LinkedIn, they talk about the IELTS exam, they talk about anything, resume writing, cover letters, you name it. We want to bring the best information to our audience because we know it's important. And actually, my parents are new Canadians, and they started off with survival jobs. And I would only imagine how different their life would be if they were able to bring and translate their skills that they had back in their country to Canada. And really, this is what drives me, and this is what drives Connell as well, to really provide that information for people. So one of the things that we do is we actually sit with other new Canadians and get their success stories. In podcast 18, I interview Anna, and Anna's a new Canadian from Brazil. So I asked her, what made you successful? What are some of the things that made you find work in Canada quickly? So within a year and a half, so we ran through a couple of things. She talked about how she connected with people in Canada. She talked about how she used LinkedIn as a big tool for making those connections. One of the things that Anna realized was, as a Brazilian moving to Canada, in Brazil, certifications aren't weighed very heavily when you're looking for work, but in Canada, it's very heavy. And she works in the cybersecurity space, so she needed to get the certifications before she made the move to Canada. And really, this is what prepared her for the Canadian market, is because she understood what the market needed and she prepared herself with certifications for that. She took an entry-level position to get that Canadian experience that everybody talks about. And this is an interesting concept because the Canadian experience is not just working for a Canadian company, but it's also understanding the culture within the company. And that's what she got doing a 3-month contract for the government. And she then took that, and she's now working for a large telecom in Canada. And she did it because of that 3-month experience that she got working for with the government. And she also had regular conversations with recruiters and managers. And actually, she found her job, not the contracting job, but her second job, which was the ideal job, which was the same job she had back in Brazil through LinkedIn. And really, LinkedIn, if you're not on it today and if you're not leveraging it effectively, we're going to cover some of how you're going to do that in the 5 habits. But you need to be on LinkedIn. You have to understand it because that's where recruiters go to look for people. And if you have the right profile and you have the right things that display your personal brand, I'm going to put air quotes here, that talk about your personal brand and what you're able to deliver, people will come and look for you as long as you do your profile correctly. And, in under a year, she got her ideal job in Canada, which makes her, and that's a success story that we interviewed. We also interviewed another gentleman, Vinil from Singapore, who was from India originally, and he got a job before he left Singapore for Canada. So there's things that you need to do, and you can listen to that podcast as well. I think it's number 15 or 16, and it's fantastic to hear these success stories. So for those of you that, think about there aren't opportunities out here, there's lots of opportunities in Canada. You just need to prepare for them. So one of the reasons why you want to be prepared and you want to upgrade your job search process is what we found is on average that people are unemployed for 18 weeks, around 18 or 17.9 weeks. The average earning for an average Canadian is around $1,000 a week. So $4,000 a month is $60,000 a year. So the average cost of not working is $18,000. So when you don't put the work in and you don't put the preparation in, it's costing you. So whether you're working or you're searching for work, if you're not working, it's costing you. So, the last thing you want to do is come to Canada, bring your families over, and then have to worry about how you're going to pay all your bills. And, in some cases, you're going to have savings that you're going to bring with you, but you don't want to deplete all your savings before you find work. So doing the preparation ahead of time is really important. And this is what we're going to cover today. So one of the big common mistakes that we found, and this is based on the research that we've done and the conversations that we've had with people, is the mindset that they bring into the work search process. And a lot of it is around there's no jobs out there, I'm not qualified enough, I don't know the right things, I don't have the right experience. And what we're gonna show you is that you do have all of that stuff. Our firm belief is that everybody has the capabilities to pretty much obtain any job that they're fully qualified for. And even if you're not fully qualified for the job, if you have the key components within the job, you can get hired as long as you bring the right confidence to the table. And you think about it this way, when you're sitting across the table from a hiring manager and you're speaking confidently, you know your stories, and you understand what he needs, you're able to give him the solution to the problem that he has. One of the things that Sonia and I talked about earlier was, you are there to solve a problem. The organization is hiring you because they have a problem, they need to fill the gap, and that's why they're hiring you. Now, wouldn't it be amazing if you knew how to solve that problem with your skills and your experience and your education? That's what we're trying to do for you. So that's what we're going to cover in the 5 habits. So the 5 habits are really simple, and the 5 habits that we found have been really successful for our candidates. So habit number one is get to know your market, understand what they want, and then tailor your resume, tailor your cover letter for the market. And we'll get into that. And then we're going to talk about how to get to know yourself. So some of the things that you need to highlight in order to answer the questions that your market is looking for. And one of the big things that we also get from a lot of our candidates is they want to network. And one of the areas that people struggle with today is how do I connect and network with people in North America from outside of North America? And a lot of it is, and we've even seen it, and we just did a blog post on this, where people will go in for the ask before they do anything for the person on the other side. So it's like, can you give me a job? Here's my resume. Can you assess my profile? Can you tell me how eligible I am for a job? Well, if you do that and you go in for the ask without any sort of research or understanding your market or your customer, you're most likely going to get rejected and people are going to turn you away. So you got to research before you start reaching out, and we'll show you how to do that. We'll actually we'll show you a tip and a tool that we use on how to automate how to get the information in your inbox automatically, which is really neat. And then we're going to talk about helping others before you're asking for help, and this is a big one. And then thinking like a CEO. So we'll get into that as we go through this. So habit number one is knowing your market. And actually, from a Toastmasters perspective or a public speaking perspective, because I'm also a public speaker, one of the things that you want to do is you want to understand what your market wants in order to deliver the right content. So what do companies want from you, from your job title today? And what's interesting is when you're overseas and you're looking at job titles, they don't necessarily tie into the job description. And where you want to focus your energies is not so much on the title, but more within the task. And we'll cover that in a second. The other thing is when you look at job descriptions, you have to look at them like grocery lists. Now, when you think about a grocery list, and for those of you that do groceries, and do you do groceries, Sonia?
Of course. I need to eat.
So when you do a grocery list, what you typically do is you put the most important items at the top of the list, right? So you put your milk, you put your bread, you put the essentials. You need these. And then underneath your list are everything else. So if it's something that gets missed, it's not a big deal because you've captured all your essentials. And the way you're going to look at your job description is like a grocery list. The things at the top of the job description are the things that the employer is looking for. And actually what you're going to do, and we'll walk you through in a second, is how to rate which skills are the most important that they're looking for. And that's by taking a couple of resumes and putting them together and doing that. And I'll show you that in a second. The other part is asking what they're looking for. So, understanding what your market needs in terms of education, in terms of skills. I talked about Anna, and she realized in her cybersecurity space in Canada, the one thing she needed was these certifications. And she learned about these certifications because she reached out to people in the industry, and she asked them, so what's the most important thing you need to do when you hire somebody for a cybersecurity role? So she asked, and she kept going out there and asking and getting clear and more concise information. The big thing is just stop guessing what they want and just ask them what it is they need so you can provide it. So we talked about LinkedIn as a tool to find jobs and job descriptions, because you might be asking yourself, where do I get job descriptions? There's so many websites. LinkedIn does an incredible job of highlighting jobs that are related to what's in your profile. So this is why having a complete profile is really important, because it'll actually show you jobs that are related to what you do. So once you're in LinkedIn, you pull out a couple of job descriptions, and you're going to look at the job title, and you're going to look at the tasks. And what we found is job titles in other countries are very different from how they relate to jobs in Canada. So what you want to do is, it's great, your job title might match what you did back home, but more importantly, what you want to do is go through each of the job lines to see if it's actually tied to what you did in your previous role in your country. And taking that will actually make sure that you're applying for the right job. So this is really understanding your market, breaking it down by, what kind of degrees do you need, what kind of experience do you need, if you've done work with specific systems, LMSs, like the example here, have you done project work? Taking that down and breaking it down by line will tell you whether or not you're actually applying for the right role. and the job title isn't complete. And this is where so one of the things we asked our people to do is go through the job description line by line. And then what we do is we have you break down those areas into three. We break down the job description into three areas. What are the responsibilities? What are the hard skills? And what are the soft skills? And we take people and we have them do 5 or 10 job descriptions, and then they take a line from each of those job descriptions and they start matching it with either the responsibilities, the hard skills, and the soft skills. This is a very manual way to do it, but this is the most effective way to see what is actually more important within an industry, within a role, and within the job that I'm trying to target. So you're going to take down your responsibilities, you're going to start listing them out, and you're going to see similarities, right? So one of the ones that we have here at the top is establishing our annual marketing strategy and tactics across all media channels. This is from a media job. We found like on 8 resumes that showed up 8 times. So that is the items that you want to speak to in your resume and in your cover letter. And this is how you start to isolate and break down the actual job market and figuring out, this is what they're looking for. These are the things I need to speak to. And if you're back home and you haven't made the transition to Canada yet, you can actually start picking up those experiences back there without having to make the move. So I know this is really high level, but this is a great way to just break it down in terms of figuring out, what is the job market looking for in Canada, responsibilities, hard skills, soft skills, and how do you match up to those? So that covers off habit number 1, really understanding your market. Habit number 2 is taking each of those lines, so responsibilities, hard skills, soft skills, and identifying how you tie in with those things. So we ask ourselves 4 questions when it comes to each individual task within a job description. How did I do that? How do I do it differently from others? How can I prove that I did it well? And then going back to a story where it went really well or went really badly, or poorly is the other word that we try to use. So that's just you and how you relate to each of those items within the job description. So what we get people to do is expand on each of the points. So now that you know that responsibilities, there's a score of 8, that's one of the questions that you're going to want to answer in your resume and in your cover letter and even in your LinkedIn profile, you can start addressing individual stories to each of those questions. And this is you understanding yourself so you can tie it back to each of those questions. So how did I do that? In this particular example, we talked about how this person worked with media vendors, marketing teams, and IT to set up client marketing campaigns. How did they do it differently from others? So the one thing that we have a firm belief on is that everybody is unique. And a lot of people don't realize that they're unique because they use generic language. So going in and talking about specifically about what you do and what you'll find in the Canadian market, or what we found in the Canadian market, a lot of people like to use we, especially from Southeast Asian countries. They use we. They don't like to highlight what I did because they think of it more of a team effort. You have to put the I's in there because hiring managers and recruiters want to know what you specifically did for that particular role. And breaking it down and then putting in some statistics and numbers. So how can I prove that I did it well? You put in numbers: 12,000 likes, increased sales by 15%. The CEO said he'd use my campaign across the region. And that's breaking down the details, and that's just you getting more specific what you do for each of those responsibilities, hard skills, and soft skills. And then you collect all these stories. One of the things that we're really big on, and I guess this comes from the public speaking, is we collect our stories. We put all these items into, we call it a brag book. And a brag book is there so you can always go back and recollect what you went through. Sonia, I don't know about you, but there's been so many times where we've gone through so many things that we actually forget all the great things that we do.
It is so true.
Right?
Especially when you're on the spot during an interview. Like, what have I been doing?
Yeah, what have I been doing? So, when you write especially when you're in the moment, and this is the one thing that we tell people, when they're in the moment, or go back, maybe take a day or two, sit down, write down your challenging situations, write down the situations that made you successful, and start looking at all the things as to the why. Why did you not succeed at this, or why did you succeed at this? what could I have done differently? What were the lessons that I could take away from this experience, good or bad, right? And having that brag book enables you to go back and look at your story. So when you're in the interview room, you don't have to guess, right? And a big part of it, confidence comes from knowing your responses on the spot. And when you know your responses on the spot, you come off more confident because you're more relaxed. And I don't know about you, but if I'm nervous and I can't remember things, it's going to come out even worse. My confidence levels just starts to drop and drop and drop. And what we want to do is make you successful. So by writing it out, you can always go back to your stories. You can find internet questions. You can find interview questions on the internet and then answer those questions with your story. And actually, this is the one thing Toastmasters does really well is they focus you in on writing a compelling story. So when you give a speech, you're there delivering it with confidence. So habit number 3, and I touched on this really quickly, is research before you reach out. And you might be asking yourself, why do I want to research before I start reaching out to hiring managers or recruiters or agencies that are in the process of hiring people? Well, so you want to make a good first impression because you only get one first impression. And how you do that is you learn about the organization, you learn about the industry. And one of the things that Colin and I do is we actually put on Google alerts. So when things come up about particular industries, they automatically show up in our mailbox. So Google's a good way to just, set those alerts up, automate it. So, if you're looking at a particular organization, you can get everything that's recent on that organization in your mailbox. So you would look at the organization's upcoming projects, awards, competitions, whatever is newsworthy and things that are happening in the news. So for the purpose of this example, we have marketing organizations in Canada because, I don't know, this is a most recent client that we work with. They worked in marketing, and this was a quick way for them to just throw up an alert to find out what's happening in the marketing field. And these type of things would prepare them, so when they showed up in the room for that organization, they would have that information in their back pocket. So setting up Google Alerts is a great way to just put it in your mailbox. The other tools are LinkedIn. I'm a big fan. Actually, I'm a big user on LinkedIn. I don't even really use the other social networks. But LinkedIn, it'll show you who the key influencers are, what kind of awards people. So as you start to research people and you start to research specific organizations, you start to see the leaders in those organizations. You can actually reach out to them on LinkedIn. The beauty of LinkedIn, if it's public, then you have access to reach out to anybody you want. So you can use it to find out what kind of awards people have won, what kind of articles they write, if they do volunteer work, what kind of schools, because these are the things that you're going to use to make those initial connections to those influencers. So using the right tools is a big one. I can't stress enough how important LinkedIn is, how important LinkedIn is for the job search process, especially here in North America, where 78% of recruiters, I don't know if the number is different now, but 78% of recruiters look for people on LinkedIn. So making sure they have a good LinkedIn profile is going to make you successful. And then when you reach out to people, don't be a default. This is something I got from a LinkedIn expert, Shelly Islinger, and she talked about personalize every interaction that you have with people. So whether it's a LinkedIn request, if you're reaching out to people, and I'm hoping that some of you are going to reach out to me on LinkedIn, just indicate how you heard about me, where you learned about me. Just put something about that interaction that's personalized. And that actually carries over into informational interviews and even into your cover letters, right? So you want to personalize. The one thing I see a lot of people fail at is when it comes to cover letters, they just take a generic cover letter, change the job title, change the Mr. or Miss, and then it's generic. And it doesn't stand out. And our goal is to help you stand out. So personalizing every interaction that you have with people that you want to connect with is really going to make you stand out and be different. And habit number 4 is it's about helping others. And we're big believers in adding value first before you start asking for anything. So, I talked about this earlier where people reach out to us all the time saying, hey, here's my resume. Hey, can you help me with the job? And you think about it this way. If you're walking up to somebody on the street and you don't know them, would you ask them for a job? Or, would you ask them to review your resume? Would you ask them to, can you buy me dinner? Can you buy me a house? Can you buy me a car? Because you think about it this way, asking for a job is the equivalent of a car, right? So in terms of money value, you're not asking for something that's $1 or $2. You're asking for something that's 30, 40, 50, 60, or even $100,000. So you got to build that connection first. And I want to stress this because this is really important. If you don't make that connection, then people aren't going to respond to you positively. And you think about it the other way, if you stand in that person's shoes and you're asking them, they're asking you for, hey, can you go buy me an expensive steak dinner? What are you going to say? You're going to say, well, I don't know you. Why am I going to do that for you? So this is what, the type of mindset you need to have walking into the room. It's about adding value to others, adding value to organizations. And adding value is really simple, especially when it comes to LinkedIn. Giving somebody a compliment on LinkedIn by going through their information and their profile, liking and sharing their articles. Then you can, so what you do is it's a step-up process, right? So you connect with them online, and then you start moving that online conversation offline. And this is where you can start asking for your informational interviews, having a coffee conversation. And here's a secret I want to share with all of you. Whenever I want to meet with somebody I don't know very well, but I've kind of socialized with them a little bit, I'll ask them for a 15-minute chat, a 15-minute phone call, or a 15-minute person-to-person, depending on where they're located. And I do this because nobody's ever said no to 15 minutes, right? And I always make sure that I'm offering value, I'm liking their content, I'm sharing things about them, that when it comes time to, hey, do you mind getting together for 15 minutes for a coffee? They will inevitably say yes. And actually, this is how I got a mentor of mine. It was somebody I followed for a while. I added value to her profile. I followed what she was doing. And from that, I asked for a 15-minute conversation. And believe it or not, it's been 2.5 years, and we have hour-long conversations now, and we do it every 6 weeks. And it started off with just something really small. And yes, I know you're looking for work right now, but it's building that trust and that relationship from wherever you are right now, so later those opportunities will start to show up. Some of the things you can do is you can read up on the industry and share your findings. You can offer assistance. I've seen a lot of people just get jobs from volunteering. Going out to organizations, just offering their services. A lot of entrepreneurs, this is a tactic that they use to get the big name people, is they will just volunteer their services. And from that, 1 or 2 projects, that converts into a full-time job. So it's another way to do it. And volunteering to do projects with them, the people I'm closest to are the people that I work with a lot. And actually, Wendy is somebody I know really well. So Wendy's from Toastmasters. And this opportunity today happened because of the relationship I had with her. And when I think about where I would be today if it wasn't for all the different connections that I have, I wouldn't be where I am today. So you got to think about it short term and long term, and just do that work. Add value, add value, add value. Tip number 5, or habit number 5, is thinking like a CEO. And this is the one thing that we ask a lot of people to do, and even from a public speaking perspective, is put yourself in the other person's shoes. What are they learning? What are they thinking? What do they want to know from it? And if you want to know about an organization, just look at the CEO. So, Steve Jobs, we hire people who want to make the best things in the world. So are you the type of person that can make the best things in the world, and you're going to strive for that? And these are the things that you got to be asking yourself as you apply to different organizations. The former Microsoft CEO and the current Microsoft CEO are all about problem solving. Bill Gates talks about, I believe that if you show people the problem, and show them the solution, they'll be apt to move, right? So you got to start building up your own CEO mindset. Step into their shoes, understand what it is they want. So when you start speaking the language, and really this comes down to the language when you show up in the room, are you speaking the organization's values, and are you speaking to their mindset? So, I even looked at Google, right? And the beauty of the internet today is you can find all of this online. There isn't an organization, or there isn't a large organization or a mid-sized organization that doesn't have their values posted online. So all you have to do is just go search the organization and then type in, search for mission or vision or values, and it'll come up. So an example here from Google is our mission is to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. And knowing that will help you tailor your conversation for the interview. Because your goal is always to make sure that your values align with the organization's values. And one of the things that I tell people all the time, or one of the things I highly suggest is, make sure that you work with an organization that aligns with your own personal values. So you have to know what that is, because that's what's going to make you a happy employee. When you're a happy employee, you're going to give more effort, you're going to care about the type of work that you do, and your goal is to make the organization successful because that's, it's fully aligned with who you are. And you always have to think of an interview as a two-way street. It's not just you asking for a job, it's also asking yourself, do I want to work for the person that's sitting in front of me? Do I feel like I'm going to feel valued? Do I feel like this person is going to respect my thoughts and ideas? And what we found in a lot of Southeast countries, for some reason, is very hierarchical. And in North America, it's very flat. I can talk to anybody in any organization here. So you and this is what we talk about Canadian culture, Canadian work experience. Do you understand that when you start looking for work? That you can speak to a director, you can talk to a VP, a CIO, a CEO, as long as you do it in a respectful manner. So, breaking down those barriers and understanding the organization and their culture will help you become successful when you're doing that job search. So writing out your own personal beliefs, here are just a couple of mine. The only thing we can ever get back is time. Make every second count. Some of my other personal beliefs are the most important knowledge is knowing what your customer wants. And really, in preparing this presentation and putting it together, sitting with a person that's gone through that experience as a new Canadian helps me understand what it is I need to answer in order to provide solutions to you guys. And then the last one is when you say you're good at something, it's arrogance, but when somebody else says it, it's a recommendation and a compliment. One of the things that you should be doing, because you're working on your LinkedIn profile, is making sure that you get those recommendations in. So if you're working with people today that are really happy with what you do, go ask for a LinkedIn recommendation. Because it's something that you can always point out to your future employer. As somebody who's done interviews, I looked at LinkedIn profiles, and I always go down to the recommendation section to see what people say. And the beauty about these recommendations, which is even better than a job referral, because sometimes people will put down referral at the bottom of the resume, is that the information on LinkedIn is validated with somebody's profile. So it's verified information. So it's not somebody random. It's not me just calling. It could be your Uncle Bob, or it could be your best friend who you say was a former employer. I don't know, because it's a phone call, right? But on LinkedIn, you can't fake that. So having a good LinkedIn recommendation section is going to help propel you and actually identify what your brand is. There's a whole course on that. There's a whole other, workshop on that. Maybe Sonia will bring me into that at some point. Sure. But yeah. So knowing that, what we have done is we put together a quick resume template with guides for all the attendees of this workshop. So here's a link if you want to access it just to get more information. Also on our website, we have podcasts, we have blogs, we have a lot of good information that you can access for free. So it's there, and you can just take a look at it. So we're going to open it up and turn it over to questions.
Thank you so much. That was very, very, very informative. We're getting a few questions already. So again, thank you, John. Everyone, thank you for joining. And I know that everyone will have tons of questions. So I'll give you a few moments to type in your questions into the questions tab. And John will be more than happy to start answering them.
Sure.
We're getting a few questions already. So Grace says, how do I show off or articulate the soft skills in the resume?
So actually in our guideline, in our resume template, we break it down into hard skills, soft skills, and experience. And actually what's really neat with LinkedIn, LinkedIn asks you for experience, not for your job description. Right. So two things. So I want to touch on this really quickly. LinkedIn is not your online resume, so keep that separate. But it is a place where you can write your stories and you can include your soft skills in those stories. So how you articulate them is you start understanding what your key soft skills are. We showed you the format where we showed you responsibilities, hard skills, and soft skills. And then taking the soft skills section and tying it back to the experience that you have. So if you have great customer service, that's a soft skill. That's what you want to make sure that you speak to. The question is, how are you a great customer service person? So how do you deliver great customer service? And this is where I find a lot of people just keep it really generic. And even in the interview, when they do interview questions, they keep their questions really generic. And as a hiring manager, and I've hired hundreds of people, one of the things I want to hear are specifics. What did you do specifically, and what makes you a great customer service? What makes you deliver great customer service? And a big part for me is just understanding the why. So I started off in a call center, a contact center role, answering phones, doing customer service. So today, when I contact customer service lines, I know what it's like to be in their shoes. My goal is to always make them feel comfortable because that's the way I'd want to be treated. So breaking down your soft skills it's really writing it. How specifically do you have that soft skill? And if you want to add a little bit more oomph to it, why? And that will really distinguish you from other people who just keep it really generic with, I have great customer service.
Thank you. Marilyn wants to know, how would you go about approaching recruitment agencies?
Approaching recruitment agencies. So this is really, so we actually did a podcast with a woman who works for a recruitment agency, and it's really about building networks and building connections ahead of time. So find a recruitment agency that you want to work with, and start connecting with people in that agency essentially, and start. And one of the things that we tell people to do, if you're not overly comfortable with reaching out to high-level executives right away, just follow them. See what they're talking about and be involved in their conversations. And really, this is really simple. On LinkedIn, you can add a quick message inside somebody's post to say, hey, that was great information. I loved how you described that, or I loved how you explained that. It's very relevant. That's great. Thanks. So just having those simple interactions with people is going to allow you to meet up with, meet the expectations. What you want to do is, for recruiting agencies specifically, is just start building that relationship before you start going in there, asking for work, asking for employment, just understanding what they do specifically. So not every job or recruiting agency does the same thing. So understand what they specialize in. One of the person that we did for the podcast, they focus specifically in IT. So if you don't have an IT background and you go to an IT recruiting agency, it's not going to be a good fit. So just learn more about the agency, learn about what they do, and then if you're a good fit, then you approach them with, here's my resume, here's a cover letter, this is how we can be successful together.
Kathy wants to know, do you suggest looking for jobs that are similar that he's had in his country, or should he start with an internship or a volunteer gig?
So great question. So it's Kazi, right? Mm-hmm. So great question. So it all depends on where you are with your career and where you want to be with your move. So what we find with a lot of new Canadians, they want to come to Canada and start off a new career, and that's great. It can be a little bit more challenging because you don't have that experience. Ideally, if you do have experience in another country and you want to bring that over, it's going to be a little bit easier for you to find work because then you're not starting fresh. But if you're going into an internship because you're coming through a education visa, I guess is the right language, because you're going to be going to school, then an internship is definitely a great way to do it. Volunteering is one of the things that we profess that people should do when they're not working, so they can gain that Canadian experience, so they can understand how Canadian organizations work. But really, it depends on what it is you want and where you are at. So if you have financial obligations, you're going to want to find a job. So ideally, take what you already know how to do and then do it here. And then if you want to make the change once you're here, that could be a good strategy for you. So it's a difficult question to answer depending on what it is you want to do specifically.
Thank you. Serena wants to know, what questions should be asked in an informational interview?
So an informational interview is really about, and this is where I think a lot of people go in there with the misconception that I'm going to hand them my resume at the end. So whatever you do, don't hand your resume in at the end of the informational interview. Really what you want to do is you want to understand about the role, You want to understand about the organization outside of your research. So what specifically does the organization do? If you want to learn about the culture, one of the things when we did a podcast with a leadership expert, he talked about, asking for a tour, right? See what the work environment looks like. Are people talking to one another, or do they have their head down? Are they focused on their screens? Do they not communicate to one another? So, you understand what the organization's culture is too. What kind of work environment do they have? Are they supportive? Sometimes you can't come out and say, hey, do you guys support your employees, or what kind of programs do you have? Uh, Depending on your level of comfort and how much rapport you built ahead of time before you showed up for your informational interview. So you really want to understand the role. Are you a good fit for that role? And can you add value to the organization by taking on that role? So keeping it very high level and never, ever, ever asking for anything. And if somebody wants to know more information for you, like about you, then let them ask you the question. Say, hey, can you tell me a little bit about your work experience? So don't ever offer it up. You think about it, you're like a reporter, you're going in to capture the information, not to give it. So just ask questions, and then listen attentively to the question so you can dig in a little bit more, so you can get a little bit more information. That's what we do. It's what I do specifically on my podcast. I will listen for responses so I can ask other questions to dig in a little bit deeper. I hope that answers your question.
I'm sure it does. Harry wants to know, can you provide details about networking and how to do it effectively? Maybe where to go for networking or as a newcomer?
Yeah, so networking, so I touched a little bit about this in the informational interview. When you go to networking events, again, never bring your resume with you, leave it at home. Uh, my goal when I want to connect with people is I have 2 to 3 interactions with them before I start offering up anything. Where you can go to networking events, there's a couple of sites. There's meetup.com, which is a great site if you want to look at people that are in specific industries. Um, there's what's the name? There's a ServiceNow, Toronto Power Group. I forget what they're called specifically, but pretty much you just go to meetup.com and look for events organized around different industries. So meetup.com, eventbrite.ca is another one. All you got to do is a search, right? And then you can even go to association websites and they will hold their own events. So if you are in the marketing field, there's the Canadian Marketing Association. They host events, so you can attend those. There's cost to some of them. So just something to think about. And some of them will even do it virtually, right? So you can attend via the web like you're doing today. It's just doing your research. And then when you're networking, you're just finding key players within those areas, and then you're reaching out and using LinkedIn to build those connections. So you follow before you start asking for an actual connection, and when you do ask for a connection, you customize it with a personalized message. So I hope that helps. I know it's a quick overview, but it's really networking is about building relationships and offering value.
For sure. Right. And thank you for mentioning all the websites that they can access. Yomna wants to know if there's any suggestions to tackle the question about Canadian experience, which is a big issue for a lot of newcomers. Yeah.
So this is Canadian experience. It's a huge question. So I interviewed an ITIL, the IDLS, so the person who does the English language preparation test, and she talked about just understanding Canadian. So she actually recommends to her students, watch Canadian television to understand Canadian television. As well, yeah. Right? So watch CBC is a Canadian-based television channel, which is specifically around Canadian content. She even recommended Russell Peters. I don't know, maybe Russell Peters isn't the best definition of what Canadian is. But it's just understanding and viewing Canadian television, listening to Canadian radio, CBC radio, if you really want to understand what the culture is like here. You can actually hear the difference between Canadians and Americans. So watching and consuming Canadian content. But the other thing is just reach out to people who are on the labor force here today. And this is one of the things that Connell did really well is he found out people that were doing work in Canada, and then he asked them, what's different about working in Canada than it is back in my home country? So what's different about working in Canada than it is in Dubai? And for him, that's how he got to learn about Canadian culture as well. So doing your research with people that are already in the work field, and then asking them what the differences are. And this way you can start putting that together and start piecing together your story.
Thank you. Richa's next question is, how difficult or easy is it to make a shift to another industry in Canada?
So it all depends on what your experience and your education is. And really how much drive and ambition you want to pursue that particular industry. It can be as difficult or as easy as your effort that you put into it.
Yeah.
Right.
It's totally different for everyone.
Yeah, it's hard to answer this question, and depends on the industry. So if you're going to go into the legal industry, you have to have certifications and legal background, and you have to have legal experience. If you're going into medicine, it's the same because it doesn't always translate from one country to another, and there's bridging, which is why there's a lot of great bridging programs, and ACCESS Employment does that, where they can show you where the gaps are and how you can start filling in those gaps. Right?
Thank you. Mary has a question. And a lot of people have the same concern, asking if I take an entry-level job to gain experience, would this hurt my resume in the long run when I'm actually looking for my dream job?
So, I'm going to use the example of Anna. She took an entry-level position, or a position that was 2 levels below her job that she had back in Brazil. And it was a contract job. And maybe this is an approach that some of you can take, is doing a short-term contract for 3 or 4 or 6 months to get that experience. And on your resume, it doesn't look so bad because it's just a contract. But you can use that to leverage the Canadian experience piece, where you can start looking for your ideal job. So for her, it was just less than a year, because she took that contract, got her experience, and then started applying for the role that she was actually looking for. Will it hurt you? It hurts you if you stay in that role for a long time. Ideally, you don't want to stay in any sort of entry-level position for more than a year. You want to start making that move. And the people that I've talked to is, as long as they're making those transitions to bigger roles, then it's not a problem. But if you stay for 5 years in an entry-level position, then yes, that can hurt you.
Thank you. Gaurav, the good question. How can you upsell your accomplishments without sounding like you're boasting?
So just get recommendations. Let other people do it for you, right? And we touched on this. Everybody has great accomplishments, but we do fail, especially Canadians. We're really humble. We don't like to talk about how great we are. So let other people talk for you. Let them do it through their recommendations. Talk about projects. And the one thing I talk about is, when you ask for a recommendation, indicate what you want to be recommended for. And almost put like an outline of different points, suggesting what they should be writing. So it makes it easier for them. Because the last thing I want to do is have the effort and the work of, oh man, I got to write a recommendation for this person, but I got so many things on my plate. It's just easier if you half write it for them and then let them fill in the blanks.
Manveer has a question again that we're very commonly asked this question as well. Is it advisable to apply for jobs even before landing? Some people ask us, I'm landing in 2 months, should I start applying for jobs now?
So I love this question, because we've actually helped people get jobs in Canada before landing. So yes, I'm going to say yes, but the one thing you need to be aware of is recruiters and hiring managers, in some cases, will filter out your phone number if it's not a local number. So that takes your chances away right away. And the beauty of the internet today is you can actually set up a number anywhere from anywhere. So if you're going to be making the move to Toronto, find out what the local phone number area codes are. Get yourself a phone number for the local area so you don't get filtered out from the search. But definitely apply from wherever you are before you make the move. If your intent is to be here, if your intent is to get jobs in Canada, then yes, definitely make the applications ahead of time. And actually, if you listen to the Vinil podcast that we have on our website, he reached out to 45 different recruiters, got 8 responses, and he got 3 job offers. So, and that's all from Singapore. Wait, I see one there.
Wendy wants to know, what do you think about Toastmasters?
Toastmasters. Oh, I love Toastmasters. So I didn't go into this, but I'm a 12-year Toastmaster veteran. So Toastmasters to me has been amazing. So, and it's amazing, and how this can help newcomers is the language, right? So one of the things that I find a lot of newcomers struggle with is the English language. Some of them are really proficient, and some, they bring a strong accent with them. How to work through that is through Toastmasters. So the one thing you do more often, or the thing that you do often, you get better at. So Toastmasters gives you the opportunity, A, to structure, and we talked about stories, but it also gives you a place where you can practice. And the beauty of Toastmasters, it's an incredibly supportive environment where nobody's going to make you feel uncomfortable. When you show up and you deliver a speech, and we have a joke at Toastmasters that they clap for everything. Well, we clap for everything, right? Because it's all about being supportive and helping you grow. So if you are struggling with the English language and you don't feel overly confident with it, then joining a Toastmaster club will help you, practice your English skills, practice your writing skills, and it also help you practice how to organize your information and be concise, right? Because the one thing we find that, people who run on in their interviews that, hiring managers need to cut off are the people that don't do well. But if you keep your story concise, you deliver it with confidence, you deliver it in a way that the other person understands it, that's going to make you successful. So yeah, I would definitely recommend. I'm still a Toastmaster today. So I was born here, and I still need help, right? So definitely Toastmasters is highly recommended in my books. And how to find Toastmasters is really easy. Just go to toastmasters.org. And actually, I have a link to the Toastmaster District 60. So in Toronto, District 60 is the district that we belong to. So I'll share that information at the end.
Perfect. And then again, it's not just for public speaking.
No, it's
like
also,
you said.
yeah, it's also for leadership skills too, right?
Exactly. Thank you. Haley has a question, wants to know, what should be the first thing an unemployed person does every day?
So follow the 5 habits. So do your research, really understanding what your job market is. Taking one resume and sending it out 100 times isn't going to help you. The one thing that we tell people, for every job description that you like, or for organizations that you're really interested in, you should take, and I know this is going to sound crazy, but you should take 2 to 3 hours of effort to tailor your resume to the job description. And actually, there's a website that we recommend to a lot of our folks is jobscan.co. Yes. And JobScan, what it will do is you put in your resume, you put in the job description, and it gives you a score. So it tells you what the SEO essentially is on your website against the job description to show you how effective you'll be when you go through the ATS. So, put in the work and put in the effort. And what we found is people who've had a job score scan of 20, they'll have to go back and change the language in their resume so it matches the language in the job description. So take your time, put your effort in, and treat it like a job for the first little while, right? You may need 20, 30 hours a week to get that right job. Do the research, connect with the right resources. ACCESS Employment is definitely one of those resources that you want to leverage so you can get that information. So connect with the right people and just put in the work every day, right? Schedule time throughout your day so you're focusing specifically on your job search instead of keeping it random and doing it whenever.
Thank you, John. That brings us to the end of our webinar today. It was an amazing webinar for sure. I know that a lot of questions were answered even during your presentation as well.
Thank you.
So is it okay if our viewers to connect with you on LinkedIn?
Yeah, absolutely. I got 2 more slides here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so we have a free resume template for you. All you got to do is go to our website. It's at the bottom, so zerotohire.com and then ACCESS Employment. Our resume template has guides, and it's actually designed for ATSs to make you successful. And then Toastmasters60.com, which is the District 60 website. So make sure you go there to get more information about Toastmasters. Like I said, I'm really big on what they do, and it's helped me in my career. It's helped me become not only a better speaker, but also become a better leader. in the things that I do. So, and part of the reason why I'm here is because of Toastmasters.
It is because of Toastmasters.
It's because of Toastmasters. And then if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, just remember to personalize your information. Just so linkedin.com/in/Ribeiro John, and that'll connect you with me on LinkedIn. And I think that's it.
All right. Again, thank you, John. Everyone, thank you for joining us again and your participation. There is a survey at the end, and we'd love to hear from you. John has shared his LinkedIn, so if you do want to connect with him, do so. But remember to personalize your message. And if you're still looking for any resources online on how to build a better resume, standing out in your next interview, we have lots of resources such as past webinars and articles on our hub. So you can go to our website at accessemployment.ca and click on e-access to access our hub online. For people who are interested in our pre-arrival services, these are the sectors that we work on, and if you are landing within the next 2 months, or 2 months at least, please email cec@accessemployment.ca for more information as well. And we are now on Instagram, so add us on Instagram as well. The best way to get in touch with us is probably through, like I said, Instagram, or we're on LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook. And we're always happy to get in touch. If you're in the GTA, please drop by any one of our centers, and we take people in without any appointment. So you'll be able to speak to a consultant on the spot. And stay tuned for more webinars, and we'll see you next time. Thank you, John. Do you want to say anything before we?
No. Thank you, Sonia. Thank you for Access Employment for the opportunity just to be here and to share content with you guys. It's been great. And I wish everybody who's on the call, I know there's quite a few of you that are still looking for work. Don't give up. Be persistent. The opportunities that are out there, they'll happen. So just know that it's just a matter of time before the right things happen for you.
Thank you, John. I wish you all a wonderful week ahead, everyone.